"Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel." The man in the suit said, "Please confirm your identity," like I was renewing a library card. I stared at the paper in his hand, blinking at the word petitioner like it might rearrange itself into something less humiliating. I didn't even ask who sent him. I knew. I signed the divorce papers on the chipped kitchen counter, using the blue pen I kept for grocery lists. It died halfway through my last name. Fitting. While the delivery guy fidgeted, waiting for the second signature, I opened the bottom drawer beside the oven. Not the junk drawer, the drawer beneath it. The one with the folder. The folder with the patent sale contract. Still warm from the laser printer in my basement office. $101 million. I closed the deal that morning. Marlene didn't know. She hadn't cared in months. Maybe years. The last thing she said to me before she left 3 days ago was, "You'll never make it. You don't finish things." And now here I was. Patent sold, paper signed, fridge humming like nothing ever happened. She thought she won. But this wasn't her story anymore. This was mine. After I signed those papers, I sat there for a while with the broken pen still in my hand, listening to the sound of the fridge humming and the delivery guy's car engine disappearing down the street. It was strangely peaceful, like the moment after a storm, when the windows stop rattling and all that's left is debris. Except this time I wasn't the wreckage. I was the eye of it, calm, unmoving, watching everything shift around me. 3 years I spent in that basement, building, failing, rebuilding. Not once did Marlene ask me to explain what I was working on. In the beginning, maybe she pretended to be interested. But later, when the prototypes got more expensive and I started borrowing against my 401k, her tone changed. She started calling it your little project, like it was a Lego set or some hobby I'd eventually outgrow. But I never did. Couldn't. Thrum wasn't just a tech idea. It was the one thing that kept me going when everything else in our marriage had turned cold. It was the only space where I felt seen, even if it was just by a blinking LED and a sheet of data points. The sale had taken months. Confidentiality, patents, licensing terms, it was all locked up in NDAs and encrypted emails. I didn't tell Marlene about the pitch meetings. Not out of spite. Honestly, by then, it felt like telling a stranger about a dream. What's the point if they don't even look up from their phone? So that morning, while she was God knows where with her perfect hair and her perfectly vague Instagram captions, I was on a Zoom call with 3 executives who didn't even blink when I named the price. $101 million. USD. Clean. The money hadn't even hit the account yet, but the contracts were signed. The kind of signed that doesn't need a working pen. And now she had served me divorce papers. Without a conversation. Without warning. Just a signature and an assumption that I'd crumble like I always did. What she didn't realize, what she never understood, is that I'd been preparing for this moment longer than she had. While she was planning her exit, I was planning my erasure. I opened a new checking account 2 months earlier under my middle name. Closed the shared credit card last week. Transferred ownership of the car to my name the day after she called me a non-contributor during an argument over utility bills. She thought she was leaving me behind, but I was already gone. That night, I packed everything I cared about into one duffel bag. The rest, I donated. Furniture, books, even the espresso machine she never let me touch. I left the keys on the counter, took the champagne bottle from the fridge, still unopened, and drove straight through the night with no destination in mind. By the time morning came, I'd crossed 2 state lines and turned off my phone for the first time in 10 years. I didn't leave a note. I didn't even lock the door. She wanted freedom. She got it. And I got something better. A clean slate, and 101 million reasons to never answer her call again. It didn't take long. For days, to be exact. For days of silence, of peace, of waking up without the sound of heels pacing the hallway or her voice on a Bluetooth call saying things like, "Leverage the momentum," or "circle back by end of quarter." For the first time in years, I woke up to stillness, and the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. But I knew that calm had an expiration date. It happened on a Wednesday morning. I was sitting on the back patio of a cabin I'd rented under an alias in Vermont, coffee in hand. mist curling above the trees. And then my phone, the new one, the one she didn't know about, buzzed. Not a call, not a text, just a news alert from a tech site I used to dream about being featured on. The headline was simple: Breakthrough Biometric Patent Sold for $101 million. Meet the mind behind Thrum. And there was my face, right there, on the homepage. I don't know how long I stared at it. I think part of me thought the universe would somehow keep the secret longer, that she wouldn't find out for weeks, maybe months, that I'd get more time to vanish. But the moment that headline went live, everything changed. At first, it was just a couple of missed calls from an unknown number. Then it was emails, texts, a voicemail where she didn't speak at all, just breathed heavily before hanging up. She was trying to be clever, or maybe she was too shocked to form words. Either way, it was unsettling. Then, 2 nights later, I got a text that simply said, "Is this a joke?" No name, no punctuation, just that. I didn't reply, not because I didn't want to, I did, but because nothing I said would make her understand what she'd walked away from. And not just financially. She didn't just leave a man who had secretly become a millionaire. She left a man who had quietly evolved, despite her doubts, despite the mockery, despite the years of feeling like dead weight in his own marriage. That same night, I got a message from her sister. We hadn't spoken in over a year. It read, "Albie, she's freaking out. She didn't know. Please call her." That part made me laugh. Please? As if Marlene had ever said please to me without an eye roll. I started wondering what it looked like from her side. How she must have felt seeing that number, $101 million. Attached to the same man she once called a failed inventor in pajama pants. Did she feel stupid? Regretful? Furious that she couldn't claim any of it? I'd done my research. The moment she filed for divorce, she waived any future claim on undisclosed assets unless we renegotiated. She thought she was being clever. Clean break. Quick exit. I bet she was already talking to real estate agents about loft apartments before the ink dried on the papers. But now she was locked out of everything. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't calling because she missed me. She wasn't panicking because she wanted us back. She was panicking because she realized she couldn't touch a dime of it. And that realization, that was better than revenge. Still, something in me twisted. Not guilt, but a memory. A flicker of the man who once adored her, who believed we were a team. That man died the moment she left the papers in the fridge. And I had no intention of resurrecting him. I didn't plan on seeing her again. I thought I was done, truly done. I had moved through every stage of grief. Shock, anger, numbness, clarity, and I thought I'd landed somewhere near peace. But Marlene wasn't finished. She never was the type to lose quietly. She didn't just want closure. She wanted control, and when she realized she no longer had it, she did exactly what I hoped she wouldn't. She came to find me. It was a little after 9 p.m. When the knock came, 3 short taps like she thought I'd be relieved. I knew it was her. No one else knew I was here, and I hadn't ordered food. My hands froze midair as I was folding laundry, and for a moment, I considered not answering. But curiosity is a dangerous thing when you've spent years being silenced. So I opened the door. There she was, standing in the doorway like no time had passed, dressed like she'd just walked out of a gallery opening. Oversized trench coat, designer heels, makeup done just enough to look accidental. Her eyes scanned the cabin, then landed on me. "Hi, Albie," she said, as if this were a normal visit. As if she hadn't ghosted our marriage and served me papers next to a jug of orange juice. I didn't invite her in. She stepped inside anyway. For a moment, neither of us said anything. She looked around like she couldn't believe I was living in such simplicity. Like this little wooden retreat was beneath the man she now realized was worth 9 figures. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it, walked to the fireplace, touched the mantle like it held the answers. Finally, she turned. "Why didn't you tell me?" I tilted my head. "You mean before or after you filed for divorce?" Her jaw clenched, but she didn't fight it. "I didn't know you were serious about that thing. You never asked." She gave me a look I'd seen 1,000 times. Half pity, half disgust. I didn't think you'd actually finish it. I thought it was just another distraction. A way to avoid dealing with us. There it was. As if there had been an us left to save. You left, I said. You made that choice. You thought you were trading down, but you were just too early to see where the market was headed. That one stung. I saw it in her eyes. She flinched but tried to hide it. I was angry, she said. You shut me out. I laughed. Not loudly. More like the breath left my chest in the shape of a chuckle. You deleted me long before I shut you out. You just forgot to unfriend me in real life. Silence again. Then her tone shifted, softer, rehearsed. I made a mistake. And there it was. Not an apology. Not accountability. Just the beginning of a pitch. I could already hear the next line coming. Something about second chances or shared memories or how we were stronger together. But I didn't let her finish. I sold the patent in my name only. The money's locked in a trust. Even if you contested, it'd take years and you'd walk away with nothing. You know that, right? She blinked. Once, twice. Her lips parted. I'm not here for the money. Then why are you here? A beat. Her voice cracked, just enough. Because I didn't think you'd actually disappear. That got to me. For a brief second, I remembered the version of her I used to love, the one who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during sci-fi movies, who danced barefoot in the kitchen to bad 80s songs. But that woman left a long time ago. She was buried under spreadsheets, vanity, and a hunger for status that never included me. I stepped back toward the door. You should go, Marlene. She didn't argue. She just looked at me like I'd ripped something out of her chest and left a hollow where certainty used to live. As she walked out into the night, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. But the door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in years, I felt the lock catch in a way it never had before. Final. I should have known the first visit wasn't the last. Marlene never settled for silence. If she couldn't control the story, she'd rewrite it. And when rewriting didn't work, she'd bring an audience. I hadn't heard from her in 2 weeks after I shut the door that night. No texts, no calls. I thought maybe, finally, she'd accepted that I was gone. That the life she'd once dismissed had moved on without her. But then, one foggy Saturday morning, she showed up again. This time with backup. I was pouring coffee when I saw a car pull up through the window. It wasn't hers. A sleek black SUV, the kind that screamed corporate rather than casual. I stood still, mug halfway to my lips, watching as the passenger door opened. And out stepped Marlene, followed by a man in a charcoal gray suit. He looked like someone who spent more time drafting strategies than sleeping. Her lawyer, I figured. Or maybe a financial advisor. Either way, the message was clear. She wasn't here to talk. She was here to claim something. I didn't open the door. I watched as they approached, calm as ever, her heels clicking against the gravel. The man adjusted his cuffs, carrying a black leather folder like it contained the key to unraveling my piece. I opened the door just before they knocked. Albie, Marlene said, with that same polished calm I used to mistake for grace. We'd appreciate just a few minutes. I stepped aside. Let them in. Part of me wanted to hear what she'd come up with this time. Another part of me knew I needed to hear it, to remember why I left, to remind myself that silence wasn't just peace, it was protection. They sat at the small wooden table and she began. After our last conversation, she said, folding her hands neatly, I realized we never properly discussed the terms of the separation. I stayed quiet. She hated that. She always had. Silence made her nervous because it left space she couldn't control. The man beside her took over. Mr. Leland, our understanding is that the patent was developed during the course of your marriage. And, I asked, and while the divorce agreement was signed before the sale, he continued, it could be argued that the groundwork, the value, was built within the marital estate. My client isn't seeking to overturn the divorce, but she's open to a reasonable financial settlement to avoid lengthy litigation. There it was, the veiled threat, a smile behind the blade. Marlene leaned forward, voice soft. I'm not trying to take what's yours, Albie. I just think it's fair. You wouldn't have been able to do it without me supporting you for all those years. I stared at her, barely believing the words coming out of her mouth. Support? She called ridicule support? She called passive-aggressive sighs, condescending smirks, and eye rolls during dinner conversations support? You served me divorce papers through a stranger, I said, keeping my voice even. You packed your bags and left. You told me I was wasting time. You didn't want any part of it when it looked like a gamble. Now that it's gold, suddenly you were there all along? She had the nerve to look wounded. Albie, come on. I was your wife. And I was your exit strategy, I replied. You just didn't expect the elevator to go up after you jumped off. The lawyer cleared his throat, already preparing to shift to a less emotional angle, but I cut him off. This meeting is over. There's no settlement. There's no negotiation. You walked away. You don't get to circle back now that the ending changed. They didn't leave immediately. Marlene sat there another few seconds, blinking, calculating. Then, with that same cold precision she'd once used to end our marriage, she stood, smoothed her coat, and walked out without saying goodbye. And just like that, she tried to rewrite history, but I kept the pen. If I had any illusions that Marlene would walk away after her little legal ambush failed, they were shattered within days. This wasn't just about the money anymore. Not really. It was about the control she used to have, the identity she lost when I stopped being the man she could define. She couldn't accept that she had walked away from a future she hadn't even bothered to ask about. And so, when lawyers didn't work, she went after something far more personal. My family. I should have seen it coming. My sister Amelia called me first. Her voice was quiet, cautious, the way someone sounds when they know they're about to deliver bad news. Albie, she said. She showed up at Mom's house. My stomach dropped. She what? Yesterday. Just walked in like nothing had happened. Said she needed to explain her side. Mom let her talk. I walked out. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, waiting for the punchline. It never came. She said you abandoned her. That you ran off and hid. That you made some reckless financial decision without telling her. She told Mom she's worried about your mental state. Mental state. That's when I understood what she was doing. She wasn't just trying to guilt me. She was trying to frame a version of events where she was the victim, where I was unstable, ungrateful, and dangerous to myself. And the worst part? She was using my mother, my own mother, to try and gain ground. Amelia paused. You know, Mom, she's trying to stay neutral, but you need to get ahead of this. It wasn't the first time Marlene weaponized concern. I remembered early in our marriage, during a dinner with friends, I mentioned wanting to take 6 months off work to focus on Thrum. She laughed and said, Don't worry. He says things like that when he forgets to take his vitamins. Everyone chuckled. I didn't. I always thought I was overreacting, that I was too sensitive. But now I realized that was her strategy. Undermine, isolate, twist. She knew the money was untouchable. The lawyers confirmed it. But if she could make me seem unstable, erratic, maybe even dangerous, she could build a case to reopen the divorce agreement on the basis of undisclosed mental impairment. It was a long shot, but it was Marlene's kind of shot. The next morning, I drove back to town. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I just showed up at my mother's house with a small black binder in my hand. The one with copies of all my legal documents, contracts, bank statements, and journal entries dating back 3 years. I sat at her kitchen table, poured her tea, and calmly explained everything. Mom didn't interrupt. Not once. When I finished, she exhaled slowly, the way she used to when I'd come home from school with bruised knuckles and a torn backpack. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. Because I didn't want to sound crazy, I said. She reached over, placed her hand on mine. You're not. You never were. Marlene had underestimated me again. She thought I'd run. That I'd hide. That I'd let her paint whatever version of me suited her next phase. But not this time. As I was leaving, Amelia caught me at the door. She looked proud. She's going to hate that you're not falling apart. I smiled, but it was a tired smile. She already does. I left the house knowing something had shifted. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was reclaiming the story. And Marlene? She had no idea what was coming next. I thought I'd already seen the worst of Marlene's desperation. I was wrong. The moment she realized she couldn't win through courts, couldn't sway my family, and couldn't manipulate me directly, she changed tactics entirely. She stopped trying to win me back. She started trying to destroy me instead. It began with a strange email. An old colleague I hadn't spoken to in years forwarded it to me with the subject line, "Thought you should see this." Attached was a thread from a tech industry forum where someone, under an anonymous handle, accused me of stealing my patent idea from a dying professor I once worked under in grad school. The accusation was detailed, emotional, and absolutely false. I knew exactly who wrote it. I didn't even need proof. It dripped with her phrasing. Her signature blend of half-truths and insinuations masked as concern. Then came the calls. Investors, journalists, even a non-profit board I once volunteered for reached out to clarify the claims they'd heard about me. One by one, I had to push back against shadows, explaining that no, I hadn't exploited anyone, and yes, I had years of documentation proving my work was entirely my own. Most people backed off, but the damage was already smoldering. This wasn't about reclaiming what she lost. It was about making sure I couldn't fully enjoy it. I knew Marlene hated the idea of being irrelevant. When we were married, she'd once deleted an entire Instagram post because it didn't get enough engagement in the first 10 minutes. She lived off reactions, clicks, whispers, the illusion of importance. Now that she no longer had a seat at my table, she was clawing at the curtains, trying to pull the whole room down around me. And the worst part? She used my name, my reputation, as her matchstick. It was surreal. Watching the woman I once loved turn into someone I wouldn't even hold the door for now. I kept thinking back to all the times I'd sat silently across from her, nodding while she tore into people behind their backs, always with that smile that convinced everyone she was harmless. I remember thinking, at least she's on my side. But now, I saw what happened when that smile pointed in my direction. She didn't care if she ruined her own name in the process, as long as mine got dragged through the same mud. The final straw was when I received a cease and desist, addressed to me. Her new lawyer claimed I was publicly harassing and defaming Marlene by telling unfounded stories to mutual contacts. It was laughable. I hadn't said a word about her to anyone but my family, but she was trying to bait me into a counterattack, something emotional she could twist and parade. So I didn't respond. Not publicly, not legally. Instead, I made a call not to a lawyer, but to a documentary filmmaker I'd met through one of the investors in Thrum. Someone who specialized in stories of reinvention, of quiet revolutions. I told him everything. I handed him the full story, the silence, the betrayal, the escape, the invention, the money, and the storm that followed. He asked why I was willing to go public. I said, because I let someone else control my story for too long. This time, I want to speak before she tries to finish the last sentence. He smiled. That's the beginning of something. And for the first time since signing those divorce papers with a broken pen, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was starting to write a new chapter. One where her fire couldn't touch me anymore. The documentary dropped 3 weeks later. It wasn't flashy. No dramatic soundtrack or overblown editing. Just a quiet, powerful story about a man who disappeared, rebuilt, and redefined himself after being discarded. My face on camera, my voice steady, my truth unfiltered. I didn't speak with anger. I didn't name her. I didn't have to. The story spoke for itself. Within days, it went viral in the startup and tech communities. Not because of the money, though yes, the $101 million number definitely raised eyebrows, but because of the way it ended. With silence, not vengeance. With restraint, not chaos. People weren't used to that kind of ending. They expected lawsuits, takedowns, petty interviews. Instead, I chose peace. And somehow that unsettled her more than anything. Marlene tried to respond. She posted a statement online that vaguely referenced false narratives and one-sided storytelling. But it didn't catch on. No one wanted to hear from the woman who walked out before the breakthrough. No one wanted to side with someone who tried to smear a quiet man who had never raised his voice, only his worth. And me? I left the cabin a few days after the release. Bought a small house by a lake in upstate New York. Nothing fancy, just big windows, quiet mornings, and space to breathe. I built a lab on the property, not for business, just for passion. I mentor young engineers now, ones like I used to be, unheard, underestimated, ready to quit. I don't check her socials. I don't track her moves. She lives in the past now, and I'm not there anymore. One night, just before bed, I found that broken pen I used to sign the divorce papers. Still dried out, still useless. I almost threw it away, but then I taped a note to it and stuck it on my desk. It says, "This is how it ended, but it's not where it stopped." It reminds me every day, you don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to fight dirty to win. Sometimes the best revenge is simply thriving in silence. So, here's my question for you, the Reddit Confessions community. What moment in this story shocked you the most? And when did you know Marlene had finally lost? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, be sure to follow Reddit Confessions for more powerful stories just like this one. Thanks for listening. I'm Albie, and I'm finally free.